Good evening, everyone. I would first like to thank the GDF for giving me this opportunity to speak before this August gathering and interact with the distinguished participants and the speakers of this conference. You deserve all the commendation for the excellent arrangements made for the conference and bringing together people from diverse backgrounds and different perspectives together. I'm sure each one of us would have enriched and become better in the last 2 days. Before I formally deliver the valedictory address, I would like to clarify that whatever I speak is my personal view and should not be taken as the views expressed in my official capacity. Further, whatever I say should be done should not be taken as things which have not been done or which are not being done. I've generally kept it in the form of what needs to be done, because a lot of these information may not be available in the public domain and may not be desirable. Most of the points which I'll be talking of is at some level of implementation, is what I can tell you. I'll confine myself to the topic defending and protecting India in the cyberspace in the context of cyber wars. A lot has been told on the various aspects of it by all the speakers in the last 2 days, and most of it would be a repetition. But still, I'll try to build up the theme by which we can defend and protect India in this information age. I would begin by saying that the security experts often observe that the next war will be fought not on land, air, water, or underwater, but in the virtual cyberspace. And as my previous speakers have said, this is mainly because of the increased dependence on cyberspace for almost everything. And this has been possible because of the huge processing power and memory available cheaply, development of big data analytics and the AIML technologies to handle the big data which is being generated these days, development of the industrial control systems and the distributed control systems, the Digital India vision of the Government of India, which Dr. Alphonse also was talking today. And last but not the least, the COVID pandemic, which forced work from home even in these strategic institutions, has ensured that what the security experts are observing will actually be true. The other reasons for this is the fact that in the cyberspace, the enemy can operate from anywhere. The resources required for the offensive is relatively less. The attribution is difficult. The economy of the adversaries can be badly hit through these. And last but not the least, this can be used to promote their own companies and products in a subtle way. So cybersecurity is going to be the lifeline of national security. Chinese President Xi Jinping at a meeting in early 2014 only said that internet security and informatization is a major strategic issue concerning a country's security and development, as well as people's life and work. So conventional wars without any cyber component in it is totally unlikely. So given this scenario, I would begin by first trying to elaborate what we need to defend. So defending India in the cyber wars definitely is not about defending the physical territory, but it's definitely about defending all the critical information infrastructure of the country, the Indian economy, the interests of the Indian companies, the sensitive data, the R&D efforts, the intellectual property rights of our countrymen, prevent loss of life, due to cyber terrorist attacks, and above all, to prevent the reputation of the country and the sovereignty of India. In the cyber terrorist attack category will be things like hijacking the traffic control systems of the airways, the railways, the metros, the smart cities, or the manipulation of the nuclear installations of the country, or the distributed control systems overseeing the critical functions in any industry, like the operation of the boilers, or it could be the manipulation of the O2 control flow to critical patients in a hospital and the like. In view of the vision of our Honorable Prime Minister to use digitization in improving the health care service delivery in a big way, as elaborated by Mr. Alfonso also today, the concerns regarding cybersecurity in the health sector has to be addressed on priority. In the recent years, there have been many instances of adversaries stealing the R&D related work, the IPR, etc., exploiting the vulnerabilities in the IT infrastructure, apart from the prevalent espionage of the important government, defense, and strategic establishments. So this is again an area which we need to focus upon. A particular company or its products are targeted to promote its rivals. So such efforts need to be thwarted if Indian companies are being targeted. So I'm considering all the above as part of the cyber war or preparation for it, a little bit extending what Mr. Alok Sinha yesterday described as cyber wars. So I've split my address in 3 parts. I'll first talk about the framework for CI protection in this country. Then I'll briefly touch upon what NCIPC is and what does it do. And then I'll cover broadly the strategies, the policy and the legal frameworks, the governance issues, and the initiatives concerning protecting and defending India. As far as the CI protection framework is concerned, NCIIPC, that is the National Critical Information Infrastructure Protection Country, is mandated to be the national nodal body for protection of all critical infrastructure in the country, except those in the defense sector. For protecting the establishments in the defense sector, we have the Defense Cyber Agency. Of course, we work in close coordination with each other. NCIPC has been created under Section 70A of the IT Act, so it is a statutory body. And we basically deliver situational awareness, alerts and advisories, all advice regarding vulnerability reduction. Then we review the cybersecurity posture of all these, and all these things are in the context of the CII protection. We review the cybersecurity posture, the information security management system, the cyber crisis management plan, the service level agreements which they have with their service providers, the audit reports, VAPT reports, and deliver advice to improve upon them, improve their network architecture. We have instituted a reliable vulnerability disclosure program where a lot of professionals throughout this country, they keep searching the vulnerabilities in the critical information infrastructure and pass on the information. A lot of important vulnerabilities have come up and been able to be patched because of this program. We also help in incident response in case there is some cyber incident affecting the critical information infrastructure or a protected system. We are mandated to develop standards, develop audit methodologies, develop certification schemes, help in capacity building, and also promote R&D activities in the cybersecurity domain. One of our most important activities is the active threat monitoring in the Indian cyberspace, and this is what we are doing through our National Cyber Analytics Center. For this, we get data from a lot of sources. One of the most important sources is the net flow data. Then we have the incident response data, which the CIA organization send it to us, and a lot of incident reports data come to CERTIN, which is also shared with us. Then we have the threat intelligence fields. We have data from a lot of sensors. We have data from logs of various devices, especially the perimeter devices of all the critical sector organizations. And we run analytics to generate the real threat picture in the Indian cyberspace, and we provide situational awareness to the entities which need it. Now, I'll briefly touch upon what we mean by the critical information infrastructure in the Indian context. We have, in fact, identified 7 critical sectors within the country. These are the banking, financial, and the services and the insurance sector, the telecom sector, the power and energy sector, the strategic and public enterprises sector, the government sector, the transport, and the health sector. If need be, and if we feel that there are other sectors which have ICTs which are critical because of a certain reason or because of a certain geopolitical scenario, then we do add it. The exercise of identification of the CIIs within a particular sector is based on joint consultation between the concerned organization, their regulators, the concerned ministries, and the NCIPC. And the identification is basically based on the threat, the impact assessment. What happens if this particular CII goes down? What is the kind of impact which it will have? And if it can have an impact on our national security, the national economy, the public health or public safety. If one of these 4 pillars are affected because of the debilitation of this particular critical information infrastructure, this information infrastructure, then it is designated as a critical information infrastructure, and we recommend to the appropriate government for its notification as the protected system. The government notifies the CII to be a protected system under Section 71 of the IT Act. And if an infrastructure is notified as a protected system, then the penal provisions in the IT Act says that any unauthorized intrusion to this protected system mean a penalty of 10 years of imprisonment. The good thing about it is that you have to just prove unauthorized intrusion. You don't have to actually prove any exfiltration and things like that for this punishment to be met out. So of course it's a good deterrent, especially if it is being done by organized criminals and things like that. Of course, how the state actors has to be dealt with, that I'll be talking about subsequently. We also do an exercise of preparing the criticality matrix for the various critical information infrastructure, and that is basically done to be able to prioritize the resource allocation to various critical information infrastructure for their protection. And it's actually a dynamic matrix in the sense that it may change during a war or a pandemic-like situation. The other important thing which should be kept in mind is that a lot of these infrastructure are in the private domain. Whether it is in the banking sector, we have the big banks like ICICI and the HDFC. In the power sector, we have the Tata Power. In the Reliance Industries, in the energy sector, a lot of entities in the transport sector and the health sector. So in this age of liberalization, many of the important CIAs and PSAs are in the private sector only, and this needs to be kept in mind when we are trying to defend India in the cyberspace wars. Now I'll briefly touch upon the strategies which I think we need to follow to be able to protect and defend India in this age of cyber wars. The first and foremost is to have a very proactive approach to improving cyber security. And I think we should work on the risk-based approach, which was talked by the speaker from the Tata's Advanced Systems also yesterday. We need to adopt a risk-based approach where we proactively do a risk assessment of all the critical information infrastructure and the protected systems in a very professional way. And when we should work systematically towards its mitigation. And if the mitigation is not possible, we should be aware of the residual risks which we are living with. Then we should also proactively work to continually improve the cybersecurity posture of our critical information infrastructure and the protected systems. We need to improve their ISMSs, the CCMPs, the SLAs, Quality and periodic internal and external audits and their compliance needs to be institutionalized. In fact, we need to think beyond compliance in this risk-based approach. We need to adopt the security by design principle. We need to adopt the DevSecOps for software and application development and ensure implementation of the zero trust architecture. We are following this, especially while addressing the cybersecurity of the potential CIIs where the IT infrastructure is in the process of upgradation or is still in the process of development, where right now the manual systems are there, but it is in the process of automation, so that all these things are actually taken care of when they are being designed. In fact, we have done this while the softwares of the banking sector have been improved, and where SCADA systems are being put in place. Then we need to enforce the minimum cybersecurity standards and framework. Recently, the National Security Council Secretariat has come out with minimum baseline cybersecurity guidelines for the audit sector, for auditing. We are trying to prescribe the minimum controls to be applicable in the various sectors to ensure cybersecurity and resilience. We need to have standards for endpoint devices, networks, applications, and almost all which needs to be followed by all these critical sector entities. We do need to have a national DNS so that we actually have a visibility of all the traffic and we can give effect to the data localization policy, which is the need of the hour. The other thing which I think we need to do is the continuous tracking and studying of the APTs and the state-sponsored threat actors. Mr. Alok Sana yesterday deliberated upon the various APTs, their capabilities and all, so I would not be going into the details of that. I would stop by saying that we need to monitor their capabilities, we need to find out their TTPs early, and ensure its early dissemination to the concerned organization so that mitigation measures can be taken time. Without knowing the capabilities of the adversaries, we may end up doing disproportionate response or disproportionate preparation, very high or very low, either of which may not be desirable. We need to continuously do threat hunting in the Indian cyberspace and well as at the border gateways, some of which we are already doing through our National Security Analytics Center. We need to promote the flourishing of Indian cybersecurity companies and researchers who can also help us in giving independent feedbacks and their reports about the APTs. Partners that can also help us in a great way in tracking the APTs, because the attack infrastructure noticed in the attacks by the APTs is mostly not from the adversary countries. So this is an area where we need to develop a collaboration with the right partners so that we have better and early visibility of and take remedial measures in time. We need to have a national malware laboratory or a repository to support these efforts, and its access needs to be provided to all the researchers. We need massive development of the forensic capabilities to be able to do the right attribution, because this again helps you at the diplomatic level in a big way, and in also developing the right kind of a partnership, the right kind of a collaboration and things like that. Now, offense is the best defense is a doctrine which I feel will again work very well in the cyberspace as well. So we need to develop all kinds of cyber deterrence capabilities, right from reconnaissance, data exfiltration, denial to complete disruption where required, so that the principle of proportionality can also be kept in mind while using our deterrence capabilities. I would stop at this as far as cyber deterrence is concerned. The other important thing which we need to do is to manage the supply chain ecosystem. We need to be constantly aware of the hardware, the software, the network devices, the OT technology, and all which are being used, especially in our critical sector entities. It should be carefully analyzed to find out our dependencies and to take measures in time so that we are not exploited by our adversaries, or we don't face problems in case of scenarios like the COVID pandemic and things like that. The existing rules for procurement in the critical sector may need to be tweaked to see that we are not dependent on just one OEM or one country, especially if it's an adversarial country. Further, we need to develop contingency plan for alternate sources, keeping the various crises in mind. COVID-19 is just one of them. The concept of procuring trusted products from trusted sources only in the critical center entities needs to be implemented. The initiative of trusted products from trusted vendors, that is being implemented in the telecom sector. The national directive was issued in this respect around 6 months back. It is also being formulated to be started in the power sector in the coming days. Now, my recommendation would be that the trusted sources should be based on whether they follow the international standards for ensuring cybersecurity in their products or not. The following of these processes should be concerned through independent, credible auditors. This will definitely improve the resilience of our critical sector entities. Then, as General Sani yesterday pointed out, we do need to develop the test bed capabilities to be able to test products for backdoors when the procurement option is only through foreign OEMs. Apart from the fact that they are from trusted sources, if we can develop these capabilities, we'll be more sure about the fact that we are not vulnerable. Now, coming to some of the policy interventions required to help us protect and defend India, I think making it mandatory to spend a certain part of the budget, say 10%, 20%, 30%, depending upon the criticality of the sectors, for improving cybersecurity every year would go a long way in improving cybersecurity posture of the critical sector entities. L1 based procurement should be done away with where required. We should take policy initiatives to promote tie-up between R&D institutions, academy, and industry to promote indigenous research in cybersecurity. We also need to have policies to promote Indian cybersecurity industry. In particular, we need to encash on the initiatives of the Government of India to fund R&D projects in cybersecurity in a big way and to promote startups in this field. In particular, we need to promote public-private partnership, because the most important ICT infrastructures is in the private domain, and the private sector entities have the best visibility of the threat actors and the actual threats. So we need to have the right framework to partnership with the private sector to be able to defend the country in the time of wars, or even to defend from low intensity wars in the cyberspace. The next important thing is to focus on capacity building in a big way. And when I talk about capacity building, I am talking about building our human resource capability, improving our technological capabilities, and also developing the Indian companies working in the cyberspace in all the advanced technologies. We need to develop centers of excellence and study to produce the most skilled cybersecurity professionals. We need highly skilled cybersecurity analysts, the VAPT experts, the network experts, and so on and so forth. In fact, a recent study showed that a lot of Indian companies are spending heavily on buying cybersecurity products like socks, etc., from foreign OEMs, and there is very little expenditure on having the best human resources to man these products, because of which the utility of these products have been very poor. In fact, NCIPC personally has seen numerous cases where the most costly equipments like DNS servers, UTMs, etc., purchased have not been used to their fullest potential just because they were not configured properly. Even the desired logs were not being stored, because of which the root cause analysis of the incident could not be done the way it should have been done. So this is just an example to emphasize the importance of investing more in having the right skilled manpower. Of course, we need to have indigenous technology development in the areas like CM, SOAR, big data analytics, AI, and so on. We need to ensure that we have more Indian product development companies and not just software service companies. We need to have the right atmosphere to be able to do that. We need to develop our forensic capability in a big way, because only by doing that we'll be able to develop our capability to do the right kind of an attribution. India is known as the software hub in the world, and we must leverage this opportunity to build good cybersecurity products in the days to come. Now, coming to some of the governance issues, I think the regulators also need to take up responsibility for proactively ensuring cybersecurity. Recently, the Central Electricity Authority has come up with guidelines for cybersecurity in the power sectors, which is going to be very helpful in improving the cybersecurity of the power sector entities. This is to be followed with the much needed formal rules in this regard. We need to have better coordination and synergy between various agencies and the regulators working with for cybersecurity. I'm also an advocate of having a federal cybercrime investigating agency. We need to see that we have a designated federal cybercrime investigating agency, and all important cases of cyber attacks which have interstate ramifications or which have international tentacles has to be investigated by this federal agency. And this agency needs to work closely with other national nodal bodies like the NCIPC, CERTIN, and I4C to bring about the best possible synergy in identifying, attributing, and prosecuting the attackers, especially the organized groups, the APTs, and the state-sponsored actors. A lot of people have already talked about, but still at the cost of repetition, I would say that we need better international treaties and legal framework to protect the CIIs and ensuring the security of the cyberspace in this information age. The present instruments like the MLATs, the LRs are not at all suitable for identifying and bringing to book the offenders in the cyberspace. They are rather too slow and cumbersome. The only legally binding international instrument for cooperation these days for investigating and prosecuting cyber crimes is the Budapest Convention. And the two major players in the Indo-Pacific region, India and China, are not a signatory to it. So that being a case, I think there should be agreement among nations as to what constitutes cyber offenses. There should be an equal instrument for all nations, preferably under the UN, which can help in defining cyber crimes in a common way, help in real-time investigation of the cyber attacks, and help in the countries going all out for prosecution of the offenders in case of cyber attacks. Another thing which can help, I feel, is the declaration of a no first use of cyber exploits or weapons capability. This, I feel, is also an achievable goal towards which can be reached given sincere efforts are made. This declaration is required to be made by all countries, especially those having cyber offensive capabilities, as was done to prevent the misuse of nuclear warheads. We need to use all channels like citizen forums, the right bodies, the regional blocs, the diplomatic channels to engage bilaterally as well as multilaterally to arrive at a consensus on this at the earliest. Unilateral declaration by regional powers or bilateral declarations between important nations like India and China can also be important beginning in this regard. I see the Biden-Putin meeting in June 2021 as a precursor to this, where Biden is believed to have exchanged the list of 16 critical sectors of the US and asked Putin to ensure that they are not touched. And what we saw after the summit was that the R-Evil group, which was behind the colonial pipeline attack that suddenly went underground after this. In fact, the US authorities now have announced a reward of $10 million to anyone giving any information about any important person in the group. This again shows an indication that the war in the cyberspace has actually begun. Lastly, I'll talk about improving our own legal framework, which can help us in defending India in the cyberspace. We should think in terms of making a comprehensive cybersecurity act which provides a legal framework for soliciting industry collaboration with respect to cybersecurity, especially from the OEMs engaged in critical sector organization. There has to be a legal obligation for companies OEMs selling products in India to report vulnerabilities to Indian law enforcement agencies. The researchers and citizens can also be thought to be mandated to report vulnerabilities to OEMs, the Indian law enforcement agencies, at least in the cases involving CIIs to begin with. All entities should have legal responsibility to notify breaches and cybersecurity incidents at the earliest to regulators, to NCIPC, and to certain. Its proper analysis and reporting to law enforcement agencies be made mandatory in case it relates to an incident of cyber attack. As you would all be aware, US has a few days back, made it mandatory for all its banking utilities to report to regulator within 36 hours of them discovering that the incident has happened, and to its customers as soon as possible. This law only should also mandate what I was talking about before, that is to follow the minimum baseline cybersecurity practices. Then our laws must also fix the responsibility of companies collecting data from our country to protect the same. Data localization has to be the norm for the companies to operate in India. These laws need to cater to the requirements of the law enforcement agency for getting the sought for information in real time. And lastly, we need new procedural laws to deal with cybercrime and its investigation and prosecution. The old Evidence Act and the CRPC, I think, is not suitable, and they were written at a time when this technology did not exist. So I think instead of doing bits and pieces of changes in the CRPC and the Evidence Act, it's better we formulate a totally new procedural law to handle cyber crimes. Attacks can change based on the international geopolitical situation. So we need to be aware of the geopolitical developments and maneuver it properly to suit our interests. In the end, I would like to end by saying that with the forums like these and the think tanks like you available in the country, we'll definitely be able to protect and defend India in the cyber wars. I would like to formally once again thank the Global Dialogue Forum and the Konrad Adenauer Foundation for having organized this event at a lovely place, I would say, far from Delhi, where there's no pollution and you can enjoy the greenery and all. You deserve all the compliments for bringing everyone together, for making us richer than what we were 2 days before. And thank you all in the end for the patient listening. Thank you and Jai Hind.